And can we evolve something which without compromising on the needs of the agriculture? I mean, when you talk about dialogue also, we need to put certain preconditions. We are not saying that water should be allocated to industry at the cost of agriculture. But without compromising on that, can you bring in more efficient use of water in the agriculture sector? Because you need to bring in 2% efficiency, the large quantity, because 85% water goes into agriculture today. So can you bring in some of those changes in agronomical practices, for example? So without compromise on people's livelihoods, agriculture based livelihoods and type of thing, can we save water? Now, and what do you do with the saved water? Now, whether part of that can be allocated to industry on certain conditions. We are also saying that industries are also different types. There are certain basic industries which is required to be there for people's other needs to be met. Okay. On the other hand, you also find industries like bottling plants. You also see industries where they use water as the raw material and make huge profit out of it. Probably you have to take a complete note to these things. Second is that how does the industry use the water, and how does that water from the industrial setup come back to the system? So there is no quality control. Whole water, polluted water comes back into your system that pollutes the surface water bodies as well as the groundwater. So the whole question which we are posing is that it's not the amount of water the industry use, because they always say that we use only 3% and 4% and other type of thing. The issue is not how much water you use, in what quality the water comes back into the system.
Yes.
So the whole question of recycling, complete control over the water quality, local water harvesting and type of a thing, and then if the industry cannot meet its needs, then it can ask for a fresh water.
Yeah.
First it has to put its own house in order in terms of bringing in more water efficient technologies, processes and things which are there, which many of these people don't bring in. Second, quality control. Third, complete recycling of the water so that as much of your water requirement can meet internally and other type of a thing. And if they need fresh water and type of thing, then they should be able to invest part of their profit into water saving technologies in the agriculture side, because they can afford to, because the type of value addition which takes place in the industrial setup is much higher than what can take place in a primary sector like agriculture, for example. Now, even if they put in 2% or 3% of the profit which they make into water saving technologies, that is itself is a type of thing, because there is a limit to how much water you can have.
Yeah.
Now, what the manipulation you can do is that by bringing in efficiency and more equitable sharing and equitable distribution. So, unless industries invest into water saving technologies, we do say that they should not be allocated water.
Yeah. Do you find that there's a trend of that happening?
I don't think there's a large scale trend or type of thing. There may be a few industries who are sensitive to these issues, but I don't think any effort is being made in that. In fact, the forum has brought in a report called that livelihoods, ecosystems and culture.
Yes.
The whole issue of containing water use, in which the last chapter talks about some of these issues, under what conditions industries could be allocated water or something. And there should be an internal monitoring system by the industries themselves, even for their own image. Because today industries is seen as the villain of the piece.
And it's interesting because, like for instance, Coke and other bottling companies that have such an obviously bad or poor track record with very, very well-known conflicts. You see now occasionally that bottles that have that report that they're now investing in rainwater harvesting projects, and they're being advertised on billboards, commercials, and via celebrities, and also in their bottles. And I just wonder, what's happening. If there has been a big shift,
there has not been a big shift, but I am sure that there are few people who are thinking about it. Now, for example, there's a group called this, CI, Confederation of Indian Industries. They have a group working on water issues. They have a small water cell and type of thing. So there are, I think, some enlightened industrialists who are thinking about these issues, saying that for the larger social issues, we need to critically think about water and how industry is dealing with this water issue and things, and try to bring in more efficient systems, or saying that, or partly invest in some, providing drinking water into some villages or some local water housing things. But by and large, if you look at about 90%, it's a very careless attitude even now. They don't bother the type of water they discharge into the rivers and other type of thing. They hardly anything, because if you put in systems to recycling or cleaning up and type of thing, probably they might think that you can cut into their profits or something. You put these systems in place. So they don't want to even do this minimum thing unless there are people's resistance. No, there are people have fought against some of this pollution type of thing. So there, the industry has been forced to bring in some measures and type of things. Or there's a citizens committee in many places now, who work as a watchdog on some of these issues. So those pressures seem to have worked in some places, but otherwise, on their own, I don't think industries have been, by and large, bringing anything to engage with this issue.
Yeah. What about
So I just complete this. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the second type of work the forum at the moment is doing in this phase is that working on some of this actual conflict. So one is this Hirakud thing,
Yes.
we can do something. Second is that there's a case in Kerala,
Mm-hmm.
which is the river called the Chalakudi river, which is a very small river, and all the rivers in Kerala are very small because Kerala itself is very small. So it has got its own problems also. It's also very heavily dammed river. I think there are about 5 or 6 dams and diversions is already from that river and things. There's one new one being proposed there, which is being opposed by a lot of people and things. Now there the main issue is that how lot of these water storages or other type of things for hydropower. So hydropower requirements versus the downstream people's agriculture needs, because there are a couple of irrigation projects downstream of some of these dams and things. Now the claim of the conflict or the area where the contestation taking place is that the way the hydropower projects are being operated is impacting on the water availability for the downstream farmers. Now the group in Kerala, whom you will be again meeting, is dealing with this issue, saying that can we come up with a different type of a reservoir operation model in which, without compromising too much, I mean there will be some cuts in the power generation here and there and things, or hydropower basically most of the operators are peaking power stations. Now probably that peaking has to be shifted to a base load generation type of a thing, but it can also guarantee certain steady assured flows downstream so that the needs of the farmers are not compromised.
Yeah.
So they are coming up with a very interesting scientific model of a very different reservoir operation model. We have worked out the details there. We already had a couple of national level meetings based on that and type of thing. Now they are getting final shape to it, and also having then meetings with the people's representatives, elected bodies and different stakeholders in that area to put this forward. Because unless the Kerala State Electricity Board agrees to this, nothing will change. So can we pressurize the Kerala State Electricity Board to bring in some of these elements into their operation, then probably this conflict. So we are working on one conflict there. The forum also took a little initiative to engage with another interesting conflict between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. There's a famous conflict called the Mullaperiyar conflict. In fact, it's one of the most picturesque areas in Kerala where the dam is built. And during the British rule here, there was an agreement which was ironed out between the Madras presidency, that was under the British control, and a very local king in Kerala, the Travancore king. He was very powerless compared to the British and the Madras presidency. And it's more like a one-sided agreement in which in fact Tamil Nadu is not even a riparian state of that water. Something about 900 acres odd has been given to Tamil Nadu on a 999-year contract, lease period, which is never heard.
Wow.
Yeah? And they can harvest the entire water from the 900, it's a very heavy rainfall area. A dam called Mullaperiyar was constructed to store this water, and they have been diverting this water to Tamil Nadu completely. Kerala benefit is only get some bit of a, let's say, a bit of a tourism type of thing which takes place around Periyar Lake or something. Now this dam is something about 113 or 114 year old. Now people in Kerala, especially downstream of the dam, they are feeling very insecure, saying that the dam can burst anytime. So the whole conflict is around the issue of dam safety. This is the first time people are talking about dam safety issue, because people have observed some type of leakages from the structure, and there have been a whole lot of technical committees which have been appointed to look into the whole safety issue of the thing. Experts are don't agree on many of these things. Many experts, I mean, if the expert group is appointed by the Tamil Nadu government, then they take a very different view. Experts of Kerala government or their appointed people take a different view type of a thing. So there has not been an agreement on the safety issue of the structural strength or the safety of the dam itself, even among the experts. Now, can we do something about this conflict? So we tried to hold a large meeting in Delhi to inviting both Kerala and the Tamil Nadu, this one. Kerala came, Kerala Minister of Water Resources came, he gave a speech. A lot of members of Parliament of Kerala came, a lot of people came, but nobody came from Tamil Nadu. It was better for because they didn't want to engage with this issue. So we have not left this issue, but we are trying to see what can be done.
Yeah.
So we are saying that there are 2-3 issues that are involved. One is that safety is an important issue.
Mm-hmm.
No expert can guarantee. If mass of people feel threatened by this dam, which is 113 and 14 years, then we should take that serious. In fact, in one of the training programs the forum did in Kerala, we took all the participants to the dam site. There's an agitation going on for the last 2 years continuously. People are sitting there agitating. And we found that we went to some houses, the women were saying that during the monsoon season, they literally pack all their bags and keep. So that if there is any news of dam burst, they can run out and thing. Children are insecure and that type of thing. So there's a lot of social psychological problems which people are going through. On the other hand, we say that okay, there's a type of agriculture which is developed in Tamil Nadu based on this water. So you can't also tell them that you can't give you water and type of a thing. Now Kerala is saying that we are committed to give water to Tamil Nadu, but we need a new dam. We say that yes. Now new dam means there will be little more submergence. So a lot of environmentalists are against constructing a new dam. So one of the arguments is that can we keep the height of the water lower and transfer this water to Tamil Nadu, and they can have build up their storages there and store this water. So that without any new dam or not creating problems for the existing dam, maybe you can use that. Or you construct a new dam but with a lower height, but transfer this water or convey this water during the monsoon or the post-monsoon period to Tamil Nadu side where the agriculture is developed. And you have storage systems there, you store your water there. So that then with less submergence, Tamil Nadu can get its share of water.
Mm-hmm.
But they are not able to agree on this issues, and it's a very live issue. And for the first time, this whole dam was created a debate about dam decommissioning. In fact, Kerala is now talking about dam decommissioning. Otherwise, like in the US, dam decommissioning is an important is happening. But here, nobody, only some of the environmentalists have been talking about it. But at least today now, some of the mainstream people are also now started talking about decommissioning. So we don't know how this whole thing is going to unfold. But it's a very real issues, and the forum has been able to do some preliminary work in that area. We are still debating what we can do. So this is the second dimension. The third dimension, and then I'll stop here, is that can we do something to prevent water conflicts? The old saying goes, prevention is better than resolution very often.
Yes.
So what we thought was that there are some of the contentious issues in the water sector in India. If we can build up some type of social consensus broadly about some of these issues, then probably it may not give rise to new conflicts. One of the areas is, for example, how do you deal with allocation issues? Because that has been at the core of, that's one of the learnings which have been listened, that unless we can address the issue of allocation across different water uses. Now when we say water uses, not only in terms of water uses by the humans, but even by the ecological needs. Environmental flows or ecological flows also need to be built into your overall allocational thing. Unless we come up some type of a plan of that type of thing, some broad principles and methodology, how you do it, and then build social political consensus around it. And also that gets reflected in the policies and type of a thing. Probably you can't prevent conflicts. Now, for example, if there is a 5% shortage of water or rainfall, and if there is a cut in the, let's say, irrigation use, always there is a conflict. Farmers, up in arms against that whole thing. But a similar situation takes place, maybe it's a bad example, but in the US, for example, because I've been told that the first cut is on the agriculture use. They apply an agriculture use. People are not even allowed to even water your own lawns, for example. There's a scarcity type of a thing. But people accept that because there's a social consensus which is built up over years, saying that when there's a shortage, this is how you're going to reallocate water. You don't compromise on your water flows or the fish and other type of thing, because that is people feel that's an important thing to be dealt with. But that type of discussion doesn't take place here. So one of the issues we thought was that we can contribute to this type of policy reorientation to some extent is, can we come up with some type of synthesized understanding about allocation issues. So we set up a working group on that on behalf of forum. We worked for 2.5 years and brought up this report, which was released in Delhi by the Minister of Environment, Jairam Ramesh. I think it was quite well received and things. So that is one way of contributing to the whole discourse and policy change and type of things, saying that it can have a long-term impact. We are not saying that because of this report things are going to change immediately. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we are trying to see that can we build, this is like a benchmark understanding around which can we now take this up to a lot more people, discuss it out, develop it further, and type of thing, so that there is a consensus around allocation issues.
Yeah.
The second issue is the whole question of institutions and legal issues.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to put this in place, what is the type of present institutional legal issue? Because one of the important lacunae, I would say, is the legal things about water is also pretty embedded in the whole private property concept, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not informed of the whole biophysical and socio-cultural peculiarities of water. It's not informed.
Yes.
I mean, it is true. Second, the institutions also is all very bureaucratic. You don't have any democratic space for people, different stakeholders to come, interact, discuss out the type of water availability, how do you share it, and how to come agreement and type of a thing. So unless you create nested institutional or democratic institutions at different scales, starting from a village or a micro watershed to sub-basin, basin levels and type of a thing, these conflicts also cannot be addressed. What happens today is that whenever there is a conflict, especially transboundary, the interstate conflict, there is a tribunal which is appointed.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way the central government can intervene. The tribunal takes 15-20 years even to give its verdict. Once that verdict comes also, nobody agrees to that. Even the contending states, they don't, because very often one of the parties are unhappy about it. Kaveri verdict was given, I think, after such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
All the contending states are going to the Supreme Court today. And Supreme Court has accepted the petition, which they should have done. Because once the tribunal gives, then they should have only approached the tribunal for a review. So similarly, none of the conflicts have been able to resolve and type thing. Other type of minor conflicts are all because of criminal cases, basically, because police case and other type of things. So we don't have a legal institutional framework which can deal with a natural resource type of related conflicts like water. So can we come up with that? So there's a working group working on that. Hopefully we'll get a good report out of them over the next few months. So we thought at least these are two base documents which you can take for a larger dissemination and changing people's mindsets to some extent, reorient the way you conceptualize about water and manage water.
Yeah.
So this is a broad, I would say, one is trying to understand water conflicts through documentation and other type of efforts, work with a couple of active water conflicts to learn from them and see, at least to engage with those type of conflicts, can we come up with a new strategy. Third, can we do something in preventing water conflicts. So these are the broad three areas of our work at the moment. Okay, so
Thank you. I should give you
Yeah,
a round of
that's a
applause.
broad spectrum which we covered. Yeah.
I have like a couple little. I have several little questions from
Okay, yeah.
just embedded within what you just said.
Yeah.
But one of them is that. So you mentioned that some of your work in learning how to prevent water conflicts
Yeah.
is trying to create legal or institutional mechanisms that
Yeah.
will help ameliorate it or prevent it altogether. And so I was wondering if there's any sort of attributes that you think would be necessary for nested institutions
Mhm.
in order to make sure that they are functioning to prevent
Right.
conflicts, as opposed to giving more rights to certain stakeholders or etc.
I would say that there are a couple of attributes which are attributes of preconditions if they have to work and if they have to be created and work. One is that the whole question of availability of data and information to people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think very often why people are not getting an informed debate in India about water or any other similar type of issues is that people really don't get data and good quality data in terms of things. Because there are a whole lot of problems with that. One is that the way the data is collected today, they are not reliable. And if you look at the way the data is being collected today, it's not. Second, this data does not become available to people. People means I'm talking about not people as in an abstract category, whether even people who are living in the villages or what, or even civil society groups or NGOs or anybody who wants to do something along with the people in terms of planning or type of thing, you don't get access to data and things. So unless you democratize the whole question of data and you put in systems, you get you spend money and collect good quality data through participatory mechanisms, and you have huge networks of colleges and high schools and type of thing where people can be involved, even collecting rainfall data and other type of, it doesn't need rocket science to collect this type of data.
Yeah.
But you need an approach and an aptitude to do this type of thing. So we have been also trying to develop some models, not through forum but through other type of work, and how we can do that type of a thing. So I think one of the preconditions, if this type of nested institutions or even multi-stakeholder platforms to work, if different contending people have to work, come together, discuss and debate and decide on things. I think one of the major issues which we need to tackle is the whole question of good quality data to be made available to people, either free of cost or in whatever way, so in a usable manner. The second issue is that, and also, see, there is also power relation. When you say that there are different types of stakeholders are going to come together to discuss through nested institutional framework and things. I mean, there are ordinary farm